Okay, I just want to say thank you for everyone for joining the webinar, and I'm going to give people the opportunity to log on for the next couple of minutes before going ahead and introducing the panelists. So this webinar will be recorded and placed online for everyone to view on Facebook and also Correctional Views website. So you'll be able to view this on the Facebook pages of Correctional Views Advance Carolina or my page personally. My name is Dominique Goodman, and I align with Advance Carolina and my organization Correctional Views. And today we are holding a conversation surrounding the Black stance against 4th of July and what that actually means and feelings behind the mentality of Black individuals in America today. We do have panelists together today to speak on this matter, and I do want to provide a moment so they are able to introduce themselves. And I am going to go ahead and start with you, Chuck, and speak with the people.
What's happening, man? So good to see everybody. This is personally my first live, you know what I'm saying, going live from the Bean. Huge shout outs to AC, CV, and all of my dogs doing good work. I'm the co-host of an amazing show called Common Narrative, where we have the opportunity to have Girl Down. And I believe, you know what I'm saying, that this conversation is both impactful, poignant, and purposeful due to the fact that, like, liberation comes, you know what I'm saying, and the ability to understand what the circumstance is, as well as, more importantly, what the opportunity is to gain. And by us abstaining from the 4th of July, as said best by great brother, big alpha brother, Frederick Douglass, I can't wait to unpack what it actually means to me, because I'm born on Juneteenth, you know? So, like, last Friday, a couple of Fridays ago, when everybody was lit, I appreciated it. But more importantly, being born on that day truly symbolizes for me a greater commitment to continue to keep the conversation going, and also at the same time stay in line with the intentions of both our ancestors and family members. So thank you so much for having me.
Not a problem. LA.
Hey y'all, thanks Dom for having me. Really good to be here. Lamishia Whittington Kaminsky, folks call me LA, and I am the Deputy Director with Advance Carolina, and just really good to be here on the call to discuss July 4th and the many nuances of July 4th for, you know, Black folk. So just good to be on.
Okay, and so today's talk is actually going to be our smallest amount of panelists that we've had on the table talks before. In typical 2020 fashion, it has been a Monday, and a lot of things have happened. However, we still felt that it was necessary to have this conversation, elevating the mindsets of Black Americans today. When I think about personally July 4th, I do not ever think of freedom. So for those who are familiar with my background, I was wrongfully convicted of a crime and sentenced to prison for 5 years. And so I've spent 4 years in a prison cell questioning why we are even celebrating the 4th of July, because none of us were free. And so it makes me think deeper into, you know, the actual meaning of 4th of July. So typically all of us are going to have our 4th of July stories and our cookouts and drinks and, you know, get up with friends. But then you have to start looking into like things out of the narratives of individuals like Frederick Douglass. And he has a famous quote that he wrote in. He says, "What to the American slave is your 4th of July?" I answer, a day that reveals to him more than all other days in the year the gross injustice and cruelty to which he is a constant victim. And so when you hear those words from Frederick Douglass, I know you mentioned him before, Chuck, what does that really speak to you on?
Yeah, like I think it's pivotal to actually unpack like what the fourth is, and then also at the same time, and make a very clear line in the sand on what the narrative actually is, right? So like if we go back, I think it's 1776, you know, a lot of bumper stickers. Maybe I could be wrong, maybe 75. But I say that to say that like for real, no cat, there were people that were still slaves by the time the last firework hit on the 4th of July, right? So like if I'm, which I am, a proud North Carolinian living up, you know what I'm saying, north. My grandmother was the first person in my family born outside of slavery. Um, I think I was telling a now ally that like in my young 31-year-old life, I've probably been threatened to my life out of race or hate, probably a little under like 25 times. I would say like 22. Last three got, you know what I'm saying, really blurry. But I say that to say that like, man, for me and knowing like what my experiences were, also at the same time seeing how popular supremacy becomes on the 4th of July, I had to take a step back and ask myself, like, man, not only if there is another way, let me inform and educate myself, but two, what does this actually, you know, mean to my 98-year-old grandmother who's now, you know what I'm saying, passed in terms of her life, and she was born in the 1920s, right? So like, I remember me and my brother having a conversation with her about what the 4th of July was at a very young age, why we couldn't, you know what I'm saying, do the lit things, you know what I'm saying, knock on doors, run away, like do all the things that we did in our neighborhood. And she was like, because at the end of the day, if you get locked up on the 4th of July, not only will you still not be free, but you'll now have another layer of obstacles, you know what I'm saying, to like push through in your life. And I think I was around like 14, 15 years old when she like brought me and my homies to the porch and told us all like, make sure that we stay like cautious and both safe, you know what I'm saying, our proximity. But when I think about the 4th of July, I think it's sadly one of the greatest myths of American history due to the fact that those fireworks, those cakes, those things that are celebrated by popular American culture to the unpopular, to the unpolitically popular, were just a slap in the face that you still had to go to work the following day. So sorry to be long-winded, but that's the 4th for me.
Oh, no, that's fine. And so with you, Ellie, I know you're the history buff with this. And so like my biggest question sometimes comes into like the comparisons of date. So you have the 4th of July that's like proclaimed in 1776, right? And then you have the Emancipation Proclamation that isn't signed until 1863. How per se has, you know, the Black culture been convinced to celebrate a day of freedom that was never given to them?
It's a really great question, Dom. And it really goes back to how we, historically speaking, like how we can interpret the many ways of the quote that Frederick Douglass elevated. What is the question mark? What is the fourth? What is it? When we saw the 4th of July, we knew that that was the Revolutionary War, the freedom of white folk from white folk, the freedom of the 13 colonies being freed from British rule. And because of the pain and the depth of our Black history on this nation, this country, Black folks were made to fight in these wars. Such as like Chuck, what Chuck's comment resonates with me is my family is from North Carolina. And so every part of my ancestors, I have records where we fought in the Revolutionary War. And so when we say, what is the fourth? We as a people were fighting in wars to free white folks who inevitably kept us in bonds, right? What is the fourth? When we talk about the history, it is recorded that Black folk actually celebrated the 4th of July prior to Juneteenth, but they did it in protest on July 5th. That's what's always been in us. We protested even in like slavery. We made sure to do our version to honor our ancestors who had fallen, even honor in that moment, our cousins, our nieces, our nephews, our loved ones, by doing on July 5th to bring and elevate the reality that the 4th wasn't ours, but we still deserve to be recognized for the blood we shed for a military on this soil that we bled for. And on that layer of celebrating on the 5th, they our folks also decided to celebrate on the 5th because they wanted to avoid white violence from drunken white folks on July 4th. So you had protest consecrating your ancestors who are now fallen and still trying to avoid, as what Chuck was saying, losing your life in another way, right? The implications of that. And so I think that's the question we talk about history. What is the 4th? And that's how we got to Juneteenth. We understand, you know, Juneteenth was the emancipation for us, but we are still in modern day slavery. And you kind of see that trend. Even when we were still enslaved, we celebrated on the 5th. On Juneteenth, when we were emancipated, we still celebrated. Even though prison systems and solitary confinement and the punitive system was created as a reaction to our freedom. Therefore, we went into modern day slavery. Therefore, we still had to fight the civil rights movement. Therefore, we still have school to prison pipeline. We're still celebrating in the midst of being enchained in bondage in modern day system, but that is in our blood, is to celebrate and honor our people even prior to Juneteenth. It's a pattern that exists in Black people because we will always protest and we will always elevate our voices to like break the chains.
So I understand like the power of the protest. Like the Black person has always taken something that the white man has given against him negatively and turned it into something popular. Example, the N-word. You're going to sit there, you're going to call me nigger. That's my nigga, but you can't call him that because that's mine. And so, you know, you twisted something that's created evil against you and you make it positive. However, do you think celebrating the 4th today still carries the same message of protesting that it did before?
Before we talk about like celebrating, I think we have to really like touch on emancipation and the notion checks and balances that always will allow Uncle Sam to have stripes and stars on his regalia. We were emancipated to win a war. Like this is a duh. Like we were emancipated so that you can have more human capital to essentially sacrifice, give great service, yield amazing outcomes, and ultimately die for a flag that still to this day will not, you know, like whip and wave in the discretion of our people. However, I do believe that there is a time, because I said this a couple of weeks ago and I say it again and I stand by it, that, you know, over the last arguably 45 days now, we've seen about 15 years worth of innovation right after the last bullet hit the last leader for our community. Now, where you identify your leaders are, whether if it's, you know, the amazing chairman of the legendary Fred Hampton, or if you're a little bit more, you know, on the conservative side, and I can't believe I'm even calling him conservative, but the ideals of like Dr. Martin Luther King, or if you're more liberated from the eyes of like Malcolm X. I say that to say that for us to celebrate the 4th, we would then have to also be able to celebrate the fact that this emancipation didn't come by the checks and balances of the stripes, you know, which we're all now healed in terms of like our people in this country, but actually comes as a deposit of equity for us to now say like, hey, Harriet Tubman is on this $20 bill. There's actually several statues around this country of prominent slave abolitionists as well as slaves that can give light and inspiration regardless of your line of diversity. And so there was a quote that I actually pulled up, and it was by the good brother Stokely Carmichael, and he says, you know, I don't want to be a part of the American pie. The American pie means essentially raping South Africa, beating Vietnam, beating South America, raping the Philippines, and raping every other country that you've been in. I don't want any of your blood money. I don't want to be a part of that system. And because Black people are saying we do not want to become a part of you, we're also called reverse racists, and that's not gas. And so I say that to say, aside of the comments that you just heard by, you know, Brother Carmichael, I think we're now able to actually now take that conceptual American pie, knead it all the way out in a new dough and make an American cake in terms of the levels of equity, diversity, and privilege that should be seen when we next celebrate the 4th of July, or in most terms, the 5th of July.
Well, yeah, I understand. Like, I would probably, in reference, create like my own holiday because I would now want to celebrate like July 5th. And I'm not too sure it wasn't honestly George Floyd that pushed me to like, questioning 4th of July. Like I said, it started happening more so in prison. But what kind of like, what do you think that happens, like, or it says to the individuals who continue to celebrate 4th of July? Like, do you think that creates some type of division in mentals within the Black community? If you get on Instagram this weekend and you see your homies cooking out, like, are you feeling some type of way? Do you feel like a betrayal to the community? Or do you feel like they're honoring maybe, I don't know, a kind of system they created with like their families, and it's just like their personal tradition? Like, how do you feel about that toward LA?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. You know, I try to ground myself in, I know what works for me, right? I know where my personal version of liberation is, because I'm still in an oppressed society that is oppressive for my people. And I have been on the other side of racism and the violence that comes along with that, to both physical person and verbal and physical attacks. And so, you know, how us as Black folks, we're not a monolith, right? And so how someone really, you know, elevates their voice in the midst of oppression, what I really see is, how can we begin to create our own days, our own traditions, our own celebrations, so that it is not always informed by the colonizer. We are still caught in this trap of breaking down how we feel about things and activities that were created by colonization. We are still in that trap, even when we talk about, you know, let's be really clear. Obviously, I will, you know, say this as a put on my personal hat. I will vote for a progressive candidate more likely on a personal front, because they will align with my values. But at the same time, I have to be clear that that system of having to choose between two parties that was created by the colonizer is a very fine line, which is why I have to hold whoever does run for office very, very, like, I have to be very clear with them to say, what are you doing for my people? What are you doing for me? You can't just be voted in on the merit of your party label, because that party was created by someone who didn't look like me, but did it to oppress me. But I understand that you have more of an alignment for my people, therefore I can get with you. And I think we have to begin to see that Black people are not a monolith. I can't really judge someone if they do celebrate it, because I don't know how they elevate their voices in the midst of oppression. I can't interpret that. I can't interpret their trauma, their pain. I can't do that. It's not my job. But what is my job, or what I take on as a personal responsibility, is I do love them. And I want them to love me back, because at the end of the day, we need to create a new system for us in the midst of fighting for our lives. What does that look like? What does that new world look like? And I think I saw a glimpse of it, yes, on Juneteenth, because folks that I saw years ago that was like, I've never heard of this, never taught in schools. I don't celebrate this because I don't know what it is. This year and last year, but definitely this year, folks are riding in the middle of the street on horseback. Amazing horseback, a group called Black Country that I just became aware of, where they're riding on horses in the middle of the street saying Black Lives Matter. And I grew up on horses. And to see like that history being reclaimed of us being the original cowboys and the original cowgirls, when that term wasn't cute, it was used as an attack on us, for us to reclaim that narrative and say, this is what I'm doing with my Black body on this day, is celebrating that. I saw the birthing, rebirthing of reclaiming and reshaping a narrative. And that's really what's on my mind, is how do we reshift a narrative? How do we create the narrative, instead of always buying into a narrative that white folks create for us, and then we fight about the scraps of it?
And I completely agree with you about creating a whole narrative. Like, if anybody has like listened to like the beginning of my podcast this season, it's just like, yo, I'm making new rules. Like, I understand your rules, but I'm gonna learn them and then I'm about to flip them. But when the foundation of this country is what I perceive, speaking for myself, a lie, how do you flip those? Because you take references from the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal. Since when? So you've been saying that we are all supposed to have equity and be treated as one of the same since 1776. However, my culture was not released even after the Emancipation Proclamation. That didn't free everyone. Because as soon as you have a state of mind, you have a state saying, okay, we can no longer have slavery. That is when you have things such as prison popping up. That's when it is legal by the 13th Amendment to punish somebody and make them work for you. So you have created a new list of statutes, and I don't know if they called them statutes at the time of creation, that you can only penalize African Americans for, so you can get them back on the fields so they're working for you for free again. And so it's just like, how do you begin to shift that narrative when that's what created this country? It's the Declaration of Independence. You ever go to, like, if you're ever going to have to go into court, it's going to be utilized for some reference frame. Like, it's everywhere. How does that begin to shift?
I think LA hit it like right on its head. Like, you can't. There was a phrase that was going around a couple of weeks ago. I'm sure you guys heard of it. Like, you can't tell Black people how to think and feel, do or act. And I think in these particular times, it's not my hill to die. It's not my hill to die on. And I say that because there's so much more healing that are actually happening. That's actually happening in the forms of generational innovation, which is now creating a real silo for upward mobility. Like, there was a clip, I want to say it was a Latinx family. It was 5 gorgeous women. They called each other mom until the 6th generation of this family pops in. And I think that's honestly where all of us are looking to go in terms of how we both share our experience and tell the stories of our own people, one, but particularly for Black people in times like this. Man, not even because it was my birthday, but it was probably the greatest manifestation I've seen in my adult life to know that our country is now conscious enough to understand the implications of not celebrating Juneteenth. And so with that being said, I believe in this thing called like being sudden and kind, right? So like, as often as you can, be as private as you must and public as you have to be to always show who your values are. Always allow, for the light to be seen up in you. And when you look at like Juneteenth as it pertains to July 4th, right now there's so much more grace, mercy, equity, all of the things that you can put in a box and put a bow on it that we'll give away this weekend. People will walk around, you'll see American flag. It's like nobody's gonna like walk around and throw up double fingers. But also at the same point in time, you still have to keep yourself honest to stay under the humility of your own people to know that the work is not done and it's a long game. So while we're thanking, ourselves for the efforts that we made, in the lives of the great George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, we're still fighting for justice and real validity in the case of Breonna Taylor. And so with those things in mind for me, especially like echoing some of the things that I heard LA said so very well, like in a one-liner, as long as you hold both the culture and the appropriation accountable, we'll still be able to see more manifestations happen in this year in real time, because our efforts, as so eloquently said by Maya Angelou, are always best seen with us thriving and never surviving, right? So like, if we're looking to always say like, hey, well, what about this? What about that? Tit for tat, man, the system never been honest. However, we can create innovations inside of this system and allow for this system to work towards our benefit, like the great work happening down at AC Carolina in my home state. So.
Well, okay, I understand that you let it work in your favor through, your own personal innovations. But at what point do you feel that it becomes manipulated? So every organization in this, every company, profitable company in this world right now, what they have to think, what they're having meetings about daily, how do we keep our Black customers? How do we prevent being canceled? How do we make sure that Black lives appears to matter from our forefront, whether they like Black people or not? How do we prevent it from being like the next trend from the Black community? Because that's what we do in this country.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Really the movement, and I'll use an example, the movement you started, Dom, is a perfect example of how do we support other Black folks in creating economic justice, economic prosperity. Even when we go to criminal justice reform, how do we begin to amplify our voices so that other folks know that there are people like us that would welcome them in, that wouldn't shun them? Where I'm from is a rural area, and it's not as emancipated mentally, emotionally. A lot of folks are still emotionally in chains because of where I'm from. Like, that is like, the history is very dark, and it's in North Carolina, it's in the mountains. It has a beautiful history, but there's a lot. And so just being able to have a platform where we are able to come together and be like at a safe space and on one accord. No, we're not identical. No, we're not alike. No, we don't think alike. But to be able to have that and folks say following the call, oh, I thought that. I didn't think anybody else thought that. Well, tell me more about those Black codes. Tell me more about what you mean about Juneteenth. Tell me more that it's not just a celebration, but it's emancipation. What do you mean by that? And what do you mean by we're not fully free? So you telling me that I should celebrate Juneteenth, but at the same time, I need to be aware that we're not actually free. What you mean by that? And I've heard more of those conversations this year. Like it's been this almost painful, we all know 2020 has been painful, but it's been this painful growth spurt also, where everyone is getting education whiplash because there is a lot of pro-Black, it is Black Lives Matter, but it's also this hard-hitting truth because Black warriors such as yourself, Dom, are elevating actual critical data, history that grounds people not to be emotional. Because that's the other thing, like oftentimes we get caught up in the system because the system's unfair. And we know that, you know, here on this call very well, but oftentimes we can't come together as a people because folks divide us through emotional triggers and media manipulation. And so that's why I really want to elevate that this kind of medium here and just the charge that you're leading for us is absent of biased media that still has majority white men hired. So they're telling the stories still. This is creating that narrative. And so I do say the narrative piece a lot, but I say that because while we're fighting policy, while we're trying to change these laws, and it is painful, it's slow because we know that the enemy hasn't disappeared. The same descendants of the folks who were hurting us are still here passing laws. And that's the other thing, is like we have to grapple with the reality that we haven't gotten a break, even though we deserve one. That's why it feels like an upward momentum. And that's why they try to take down our strongest warriors, because the war hasn't stopped. And that's really the grounding that I have to keep for myself, to say when I'm talking to people about the system, I have to be real, it still exists, because the people who perpetuate the system, their descendants still exist. So those are just some thoughts.
Well, so what would be like the conversation for that? So I don't know if you guys have seen like the memes, like even one I posted was like how to talk to white people on the following situations. You know, there's a lot of people that'll say like, I don't see color. And a previous panelist that we had on last week, Dominique Manson, Innocence Principle, said like, if you don't see color, then you don't see me, because what you're saying is you don't acknowledge my culture. And so I feel that a lot of people are stepping forward, choosing not to acknowledge, you know, the culture. So, you know, and they become very defensive. So I'm not speaking for every white person in America, but I'm speaking from those that I have interacted with, that, you know, how could you disrespect our 4th of July? This is our day of independence. No, it is not ours. That is yours. What is that conversation that you would have with someone like that?
Let me go ahead and turn this up real quick. So I had a conversation about 2 weeks ago with a sports organization that has 4 letters. I'm just gonna let that resonate. In this conversation, like, man, my phone banging, trap booming, like, oh, whoa. And it's like 3 letters just keep coming out. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion. Man, I be stopping folks. I stop trains on this one. Don't give me the D. Don't give me the I. I just need the E, B. Just give me the equity. And if you give equity to our people, it looks like, 1, conversation about intentional allyship and non-appropriation. 1. 2, it also looks like creating the intersection of privilege and explicit and implicit bias. And then the third and most important aspect of it is understanding individualized, differentiated curriculum and perspective reform. So as a former school leader, you know, had opportunity to be assistant principal. It was lit. I will oftentimes literally sit here and rap bars with my kids, because I knew from the back of my heart and also in the front of their minds, that's who they following. So why would you shame someone for what their natural outlet is for inspiration? Now, reverse that same perspective. Well, you have amazing allies out here like Dale Earnhardt, you know what I'm saying? Folks not like Drew Brees, and the list goes on, that are actually saying like, hey, you know, Bubba Wallace is black, even though he may be light, he's black, and there was a noose in this, you know, location. Let's talk about why this noose is threatening and how actually Bubba needs us to make sure that this doesn't happen, because this is on our side, right? So when you look at what that equity looks like in terms of especially the intersectionality of bias and privilege, I've been telling folks for about 3 weeks now, hey man, I can never give away the culture. I ain't big enough to give away the culture. I would never give away the culture. But the one thing that I would share, 3 things that I would share with folks is the Black Power mixtape, Angela Davis's speech on black men in prison, because it comes from a black woman and it's transformational. And then the last one is Ozzie Davis's speech on A Plea of Freedom. Because if you're able to internalize and understand those things, you can understand and watch 13. You could probably watch, you know what I'm saying, the toxic masculinities of the 5 heartbeats, for all I'm concerned, but you'll then be able to understand that, like, hey, at the end of the day, if you're able to shift your bias and your perspective, lean into your privilege, because there's probably somebody right now that's going to watch this, they make $2 million a year. But then also on the same side, you know, there are folks that are watching this that make less than $40,000 a year, and honestly, you know, are seeing that, hey, this may come by the way, you know, of like a table talk or a dinner conversation from a person that's trusted to the family, and will evoke them to edify their own perspective. And if that happens within itself, you're sharing privilege and you're giving equity, more importantly, to folks like yourself, Dom, and folks like myself, and folks like your amazing self, LA, to continue to do what we do, which is create conversations across lines of diversity, so that more importantly, people are able to see that, like, yo, damn, Girl Dom is an amazing human. Sorry, Dominique Goodman, but Girl Dom's an amazing human that sat behind a wall and was given, you know, to time as if she doesn't matter. This could happen to so many more people that I know. Well, that within itself, when they extend that arm and say, for other people, that's when equity is shared. And then, more importantly, people are then able to have an avenue to create change. Now, the last part of this, and I'm so sorry to like wrap your head on, but I think it has to be said.
I'm not mad at anything you're saying right now.
Cannot. Now, if you bring a horse to water, you can't make it drink. If you bring that horse to water and it's black, you still can't make it drink, even though you may be a black horse yourself. White horse, polka dotted, pinto, Mustang, however you want to qualify. But the more important thing is that if you bring more to the water, more will have the opportunity to drink. And if they choose to drink, hey, at the end of the day, man, you find nourishment and you sow good fruit. So that's my perspective on it. I really think it definitely comes down to like sharing equity and understanding your own implicit biases, because even in the black community, like, yo, I'll say this is live, right? Had a conversation with my dog in my phone. I was like, yeah, man, Common Narrative is lit. Go watch it. Last episode. Yeah. My dog was like, insert trigger word. He was like, how you talking about this if you don't, you know what I'm saying, understand it about that? And I said, brother, that's the problem. We can't have implicit biases in this work and still expect to see generational change. Because more importantly, generational change has to happen across, you know, where you can see, you know what I'm saying, the sun fall. I have to have faith that LA's doing good work in North Carolina, and I just met LA today. Like, you have to have that ability to see the things that are unseen manifested in the conversations that you have with folks and the equity that you share with others.
I think one of my biggest reminders, I went to the gym this week. Well, I go to the gym a lot. And I only go for whoever's going to judge me for like, oh, you in the gym and COVID. There's like literally nobody in the gym. And me and my Stairmaster, we missed each other. We needed some time together. But anyways, I go back in to grab something and I'm walking out and these two little white girls coming out of little daycare spot. And so she ran up and so she wanted to open the door. So I back up, I let her open the door, like, and she's like pushing it open. I was like, you got it. And she looks back to see who's talking to her. And then she goes and she looks back and she looks up at me. And she's just like, oh my God, you are so beautiful. Like, and she just starts, you know, listing all of these compliments, and she's like, oh, your hair, that's like my favorite color, purple, like that's like violet. And I'm just like listening, like it kind of just throws me off guard, because then her sister jumps in, and then I'm getting like compliments on my sneakers, and so I'm like throwing compliments back at them, because I'm just like, okay, it's too much love, I got to give some of it back. But it depicted the perfect image of whoever her parents are, because I have never seen a little white girl glorify a Black woman on her beauty. And so those are the things that like give me a little bit of hope, because it's just like, okay, this is a little girl, she's gonna grow up, she's gonna be white in this world, she might be important and make like huge decisions in life. Maybe she's gonna change like the impact of like another person's life. However, at the same time, how do you sit here and continue to have these conversations with other white individuals that don't carry what this little girl had? Because I carry it in a sense where a lot of people can quote unquote empathize with you, but they don't understand you. So a lot of people have heard my story about prison and wrongfully incarcerated and, you know, my struggles and injuries. They feel for me, but do you understand it? Can you like relate to the experience? And 9 times out of 10, you can't, unless you've already been to prison. There's just like a failing common ground there. And so is it possible to even expect like someone in the white community to be able to be like, you know what, I get that feeling because I was treated like that in the 5th grade? Like, do they get the right to say that?
Sure. Hey, I don't know if we want to do this. Okay, I can answer that. I just thinking a lot of what Chuck was saying. Just resonate with me in so many ways. So many ways around equity. A couple of thoughts, you know, to back up a little bit. I personally, I don't really have a lot of conversation with white folks around my Blackness. I really don't. It's been a personal choice, and it's also been a personal journey, right? I had a friend, a really good friend of mine, reach out to me actually this morning that, you know, they're elevating their voice, you know, about their Blackness, how they choose, and they're elevating like this educational line around, you know, educating folk on what different things like microaggressions are. And someone who had worked with my friend privately, I believe it was privately, I hope it was, but I did see the messages, hit them up and said, you know, I get all of them except the don't touch your hair part. And I have always wanted to run my fingers through an afro because I know I'll never be able to grow one. And I see young kids, that's what they said. I see kids do it to each other all the time, and they're different races. And so I think that to me kind of really sums up why I don't have conversations with a lot of white people about my Blackness. Is because some of these habits start young and they're not corrected. They're seen as innocent. They're seen as love and affection. And for a people that we come from that hasn't quite tasted freedom, how do we know when we're actually free? How do we know the taste of freedom? How do we know that when you're agreeing with 10 of the microaggressions, but not all 11, and we're like, well, at least she's trying. Are we doing that out of a lens of abuse? We're in an abusive relationship with America that where we can't leave the house. We can't escape this house of America in like an analogy, but we're in this abusive relationship where we're treated horrifically, right? And then as soon as we are given the bare minimum of humanity, it feels like freedom. And so that's what's on my mind is like, until I can be free, until my people are completely free, and this system is dismantled and we are aligned with the creator, until I know what freedom is, I can't, from my abuse, interpret what that actually means. I can look at it, but as an ally, if I'm looking at an ally, I can't say you're a good ally. I really can't fairly say that because we don't have a metric of measurement. What is a good ally? What does that mean? We don't have like a whole sheet that says, okay, if you do this for 3 to 5 years, on the job training, internships, a doctorate, 20 years from now, you'll have graduated. We don't have any of that. We just have, honey boo, you can wear a shirt that says Black Lives Matter, and honey, you get invited to the cookout. We don't have a metric because we don't know freedom. And so that's really why I don't have conversations. It's like, if you are still dreaming about why you can't run your fingers through my hair, yet if someone violated your person, that would instantly be seen as assault. And we saw what just whistling that actually wasn't true. What did that do to Emmett Till? We saw when there was lies about assault in the News and Observer that enraged and created Wilmington Massacre of 1898. We saw that in the mountains where the KKK rose up at Spartanburg, South Carolina, and hurt the Kingdom of the Happy Land. We saw that in Tulsa, in St. Louis, in Rosewood. But you mean to tell me that you can touch my hair and not understand? But if somebody came for you, even the implication, you would cause a massacre? You choose to be ignorant. And I don't have conversation for that. I don't have energy for that if I still have to explain to you what you know you wouldn't take. What do I have to say? That's just where I am. Oh, you're on mute, Dom.
I completely understand, and I'm just looking forward to hearing, especially Bakira's response to that. Like, what are these conversations that you're having, like, about this and like surrounding 4th of July?
So I was talking to a white lady about me wanting to leave and go back to, not go back. Well, yes, go back, but for my first time, go back. I believe my DNA is already, that's where it comes from. But I said, as soon as I can, I want to leave this country because I've given 41 years to white supremacy. Surely I can give the rest of my life to Black power. And she said, that is going to be a grave loss. What can we do to keep you? And I'm thinking in my mind, that was her sentiment that she felt was kind. But to me, I really wanted to curse her out because I was like, you all would do anything to keep us here. I'm saying I'm trying to leave, to be liberated, to be able to go and try to experience freedom in my Blackness. And in my freedom, in my quest for freedom, you say it's going to be a grave loss. What can we do to keep you? And that said everything to me. And I know they get it. I am not going to keep giving people, it's like diversity, equity, and inclusion, which I hate, that we have come up with or approve a construct that allows white people to continue to mistreat us and say, let's come up with a manual to help them treat us better. Well, if you can treat everybody else good, why do you need a manual that tells you how to treat us? And that gives you an escape that basically condemns us again to say, give them time. They don't know how to do this. They've never experienced. Are you nuts? They have no time. Not with me anyway. I'm stepping on all toes, shoes, whatever's down there is getting stepped on. I have no more time for it. It's exhausting to have to, you got to think about every day we wake up doing this work and go to sleep doing this work. We're in our subconsciousness, in our sleep, we're doing this work. We are not free ever from doing this work. It's in our dreams. We're thinking about it all day, every day. We're worried all day, every day. I said, you know what? It's something when you wake up in the morning and you are worried about going outside and you have to calculate how you're going to move, because we don't get to make mistakes in this country. And they're like, well, it can't be that bad. You're not incarcerated anymore. You're in these spaces. So that means freedom to you, because I'm in these spaces because I forced myself in these spaces. I definitely wasn't invited. And surely my input is definitely not warranted because I'm about accountability, whomever it may be, friends, cousins, whatever. And so they're like, you're too aggressive. You're so aggressive. You don't agree with anything. No, I don't. If it's BS, no, I don't. I'm not going to let you get away with that. And I'm getting it from my people. That's what's so, I be so mad at, Lord, I love Black people. But I be so mad at them. Like, let me do this. I ain't asked you to say nothing. You know, let me handle this for us, please, before you take away our bus ticket away to freedom. You want to snatch the ticket back. You know what I'm saying? So that's what I'm getting out here.
No, I completely understand that. I really try to be open-minded. So the thing about me that I feel gives me a different perspective is I did grow up as a military brat. So majority of my youth growing up, I was in Germany. I'm traveling in Japan, I'm in like living in Korea and Guam and things like so I don't know what like the whole race like division is because everybody on base, none of us are that culture. We're not German. We're not from there. I'm not Japanese, so I didn't ever have like anything tilted against me. So it wasn't until I get back, well, while I'm over there, 4th of July still meant everything because it was like when you're in another country, you want a day to brag about where you're actually from. Well, I'm from America. Like you want to come to America. But I used to tell people when I came back and I started experiencing America, this ain't the greatest country, y'all. Like, I'm just let y'all know real quick. It's a lot better in some other places. I don't know how we got this whole title of being like the greatest country in the world. Like, how did that happen? And so my only like issue with that is like finding new ways to continue having that conversation to expose it to like white America. Like you are holding us back. And I don't ever want to be that person that, puts a blanket over every white American, but people fall into the category so easily because they don't even realize they were raised to do it. And so you step forward with that and you're like, okay, so what's my new approach? Always trying to find a new approach. Lately, my approach is like, you don't have to like me. You don't have to want me at your job. I am not easily impressed. I get into disputes with a lot of my friends because it's like, yo, why y'all so proud about these Black Lives Matter signs? Why are y'all so excited because your favorite clothing line just tweeted Black Lives Matter? Like, and I feel like it's like, my opinion, I feel like it's other Black people's way of feeling comfortable for continuing to support other organizations. Like, oh, whoo, I'm so glad that Nike said Black Lives Matter so I can go pop these Jordans real quick. Like, it's like this kind of like relief. Like me personally, I have a couple of like my favorites where I'm just like, oh, I saw a meme on Instagram the other day and it was a Black man saying a prayer saying, dear Lord, don't let Hennessy say anything bad about Black people. So it's like everybody's trying to find their way of like to continue to keep everything that they want to be included to. But do you all truly feel that Black Americans are ready to create their own, like to have, like we have Juneteenth, okay, cool, but that's still our freedom from this country. That's not our own. They'll say, oh, you guys have Kwanzaa. Okay, that is something that we've learned from, like we didn't experience that growing up unless our parents if that's what our parents from that country came into. I don't know anything about Kwanzaa. I can retweet some pictures about it and I can support it, but that's not ours. What and how do we create something that's ours?
Oh man, here in America, and let me say it because I call it America, just so everybody knows. I call it America. You know, I don't know that is something possible simply because we have so many that are wanting to and dying to assimilate. And they want to be accepted so bad, and so they'll condemn the very thought of something separate, something of our own. It's like, you can't do that. That's discriminative. So it's like, we can't even have a conversation of wanting to have something of our own that is ours, that is off limits, that don't come over here. It's a gate out there. Y'all can't come in. That's not right. And what if we did? Well, you have done that to us. And you need to understand that you all don't keep us safe. And I tell white people all the time that our mere conversation is not safe for me. And so when I allow you into my space, you need to see that as an honor, because talking to you, being with you is dangerous for me. and has the potential to be dangerous for you, but it'll come to me and mine far worse, and always has. And so I just don't think it's possible. I've thought about this a billion times, and I just don't think it's possible. I just really don't.
What is your guys' intake on that?
I'm always overly optimistic, and endlessly faithful to the notion that love is the strongest thing in the universe. But I say that to say that I think goes back to one of my previous sentiments, though. If you're gonna have, this amazing work being done, it's done on both sides of the aisle. And the best part about a fight is that they're never clean, fam. You get hit in your eye, you might get hit in your side. You might get hit in the nose. You might land a hit on the ear. To keep going with that analogy, perspective reform as a lifetime educator on God comes in the classroom. And so I had the opportunity to see this happen first take when I was an assistant principal in Bridgeport, y'all. In Bridgeport, Connecticut, it's no easy town. It's a lot of tough guys around there. And so I say that to say that the way we change the narrative, because essentially it's a very large Taino and Black neighborhood. And Black, by the way, of West Indian, Caribbean. I never forget when I saw my first 6'5", 300-pound Jamaican man say one word, you, and you just see children just whoa. It's like the voice of God. But I say that to say that the approach, you have to be able to go from a transformative approach to a decision-informed and social approach, and then more importantly, establish milestones on how that equity should be shared, no matter what the subject is. Now, that's both for Black folks as well as for white folks, because in my locus of control for the things that I appreciate about my Blackness, and I'm not out here to play Jesus, bro. I pray to him. That's my man's. However, everything else outside of that, in terms of my day and the move and maneuver, you know what I'm saying, for the decisions that I make for me and my son, are always centered in the fact of this. If I can create any type of positive or forward momentum, if I can create any type of forward and positive momentum for the direction of my son's life, then my one was a life of purpose, and then two, I was able to continue to push reform for perspectives, regardless if I'm in a classroom or not. And so I still do have hope, that those things are possible. But I do think, and this is the transparency that I think we're all now ripping inside of the Black community, is that regardless of where you are in terms of your advocacy, your allyship, your effort, your composure, your diction, your conviction, all of the things, it still comes down to an honest assessment of your own individual will and skill for the ways in which you want to solve those problems. And all folks don't get to the same places at the same time. That's why it's called life. And so when you do have that enlightened 63, 67, 75, 100-year-old person, and they're able to say oh, this is an aha moment that I had from 20 years ago, but you about to live this 20 years right now. Let me tell you this moment, man, you changed the game. And so to keep things like that going, along with and dying for the fact that it still starts at legislation. It starts at legislation, and it also starts, in the courtrooms. So if you're able to appoint in any of the places where you are, you haven't had a chance to vote, and you have the opportunity to vote for your district attorney, vote for a district attorney that's not going to have prosecutorial discretion and a track record of oppressing people, and do what Shawty did here in Boston and actually say, we're going to let nonviolent offenders go home long before COVID. We actually going, put in systems in place to hire, ex-felons, and then get that off their chest so that they can live like people. Because those are the ways in which people like us, or people like myself, I can't speak for y'all, are able to still see hope in the fact that I can tell my 8-year-old little boy, hey, bro, it will get better. You just got to keep doing that work. So.
Yeah, I can add a couple points. Sister Shabazz, good to see you again. I listened to you last time, so good to see you. Historically speaking, y'all know I like my history.
North coming.
You knew it was coming. Directly after slavery, and I hate to always put everything in context of slavery because that is not where our history started. Let me be very clear. So let me correct myself. So my family, like so many other African Americans, and I put quotations around that very loosely, were here before the slave trade. I'm gonna say that again. A lot of us were here before the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
It was a mixture of folks who were already indigenous to this land and folks who brought themselves on a trade route. We were master commercers. We were master traders. We were kings and queens. We already knew how to do all of this. All the systems you see was really built by us, even down to when you hear the term chief of staff. Where do you think the term chief comes from? That's not British. Okay.
Right.
These, guess what? Over 30 states still have the original indigenous names. The colonizers didn't even rename the states, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Over half, look, think about all the counties in North Carolina alone are still the original indigenous names. What is a Cullowhee? Cullowhee, North Carolina. What is that? A Hosky, North Carolina. What is that? Okay, so these names were already in existence, and you can look at the patent office. Okay, patents, even down at Jack Daniel's whiskey recipe, was created by a Black person. And so we were already creating, right? We already had medical practices during slavery. Now, wait a minute. How do we have medical practices, medical schools during slavery? And it was so powerful that it took Johns Hopkins University to write a fake medical report that claimed Black people caught diseases and were dirtier than other people, which is why we should not be allowed to practice medicine. And the federal government used that medical report to shut down every single medical institution, save 3, and Howard University was one that got saved. This was before emancipation, y'all.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, wait a minute. So did you know you could sue, like as an enslaved person, you could actually sue for your freedom papers? Wait a minute. We don't hear that narrative. There's actually records in Ahoskie, North Carolina, where individuals sued for their freedom papers. There's a lot of narrative that is hidden. So when we think about, can we rise? After slavery, in 24 states, there were Black only towns. Okay, that's how Tulsa, who had $1 to $2 billion bombed. Think about that. Today's net worth is $1 to $2 billion, and that was only one Black city. North Carolina, catch this, was full of Black only towns, a Black Wall Street, which we know of, just like New York. We had an economic hub, and we also had a Black kingdom. Second to only Hawaii to ever have a kingdom on U.S. soil. But do they get called royal? They had 2 kings. Did we know that? North Carolina was lit, y'all. So what happened is we were bombed and by the U.S. government itself. We were harassed and massacred nationally by the U.S. government itself, and folks who perpetuate the terrorism that we see in this Confederacy now that we're seeing the statues. These are the same folks. The daughters of Confederacy who actually own these statues, these are the same folks. So we always built our own stuff, and we thrived at it because we build empires. It's in us. It's who we are. It's because our history didn't start in slavery. We are kings. We are queens. That's what we are. And so they can't ever stop us creating our own narrative, which is why they had to bomb us and loot us and kill us. And so even today, I don't, like to Sister Shabazz's point, it is difficult. I do not see every Black person in America getting on the same accord to say we're going to do this system together. I don't see that. I agree. But I will say that in our own family units, in our own social units, we already create and recreate new traditions every single day. The quotes that we pass down from our elders to the way we do our hair, all of that is tribal traditions. So it's still in us, and we're actively doing it at the same time of still being killed and beaten. So we can't see that no matter what happens, we keep building empires. They want us to not see that, but we're already doing it. That's why I'm saying we're already doing it while still being oppressed because they know we're doing it. It's the same stuff they've been doing. Every time we build it, they tear us up. Every time we build it, they tear us up. And do you think we ever got damages from the government based on terrorism? No. Where's that $1 or $2 billion for Tulsa? So don't tell us to pull us up by our bootstraps. Don't tell us we can't create a narrative. Honey, we created all of it, and you did what it took to destroy us, and you didn't repay us. That's reparations.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know.
And I think that's like a strong point to make, just because, like, you know, the Black community has created its own greatness for ourselves, and it gets torn down. However, then you look at it the past 3 months, the American society becomes hypocritical, because now we are the demons, because, you know, because we're leading these protests, and because rioting and looting is happening, they're like, oh, why are you guys so violent? Why are you so thuggish? Why are you so similar to a terrorist in this country? However, we're not doing anything that has not been done to us. And so it's just like, we are becoming a reflection of their actions towards our community, and they're not here for it. And so do you possibly think that it's even like, you know, tangible? I'll go refer back to this. I saw a quote, and it said, Black people don't even want revenge right now, and you should be lucky. All they're asking for is equal treatment. If we were to sit up here and be revengeful, then there'd be buildings that we're blowing up, literally. You know, I don't think that it's a fair comparison to speak of like the Confederate statutes that are coming down just because of the representation of the meaning of them. However, it's just like, we're not attacking their money right now, to where they cannot recreate it. So if we are to, like, you know, is it possible to create the narrative to where one day we actually go outside and be like, hey, it's 4th of July, I got my freedom, we can celebrate with y'all? Do you guys see that ever being possible, like to be able to create that system?
You know, one thing about our oppressor is us understanding that the oppressor is never going to give us our freedom. That is contradictory to, you know, to their narrative and to their profitability. And so when we're talking about the United States of America, which is a capitalistic society, in capitalism, somebody has to be at the top. Because we got two different issues here. We have capitalism and we have race. And so, and you have to deal with them in both of those retrospects. And so white people are not going to allow Black people to rise up in America. That is contradictory to their well-being. They don't even understand that we are not savages. They're so afraid that we want to get them back. We ain't even, and the crazy thing, we don't even want to get you back because we ain't got time for that. You know what I'm saying? We just want you to go, well, some of us, such as myself, just go on over there and let us be. You know what I'm saying? Let us start to heal, because, and that's another situation, but we're not savages. And so that's not what we want, but because they know they did us so dirty, they can't even let go because of that fear that they have. And so, and they also enjoy their lifestyles. And so they're not going to let go of that. And can you blame them? No, you can't. That don't mean that y'all got to treat us like you do in retrospect, but they do, because that is the recipe for capitalism. And not only us, but other brown people as well. And I don't give the other brown people too much of my space, but because I believe they all come from us. And so to create a narrative that there's a brown and a Black is divisive to me. I don't subscribe to that narrative, but they're not. And, you know, the question becomes at that point is, since they're not, because that is not conducive to their well-being, what say we? What are we going to do? What do we want to do? We have a whole continent that none of us will think about, even consider going to. Why? And I know that we were here before, but right now we're 12.3% of this population and declining. They have disarmed us. They have taken away our financial stability. Why? Why stay?
So the question then becomes, why do we keep rising? Because I mean, I can speak for myself. Like, you're not gonna hold me back. Like, I'm being completely stubborn right now. They have created multiple ways of breaking up our greatness. So you think about gentrification. You know, I was gone for 5 years and I come back to North Carolina. Durham don't look like Durham, North Carolina to me anymore. I go downtown and I see this little strip of bars and it's just a lot of white people. And I'm just like, wait a minute, when did this happen? I go to Raleigh, downtown Raleigh. Raleigh's not looking the same to me anymore. Where are all the black people? Like, and it's just like you're kicking all these people out, and then it's just like you find different means and measures to, you know, come into anything that we create and like turn it towards the white culture. I now see that there's some rappers that are considered pop musicians. When did that happen? I thought they were rappers. No, we're pop now. Oh, okay, that's because you guys have deemed it popular, and it's just like, but that is ours. So do we continue to create for them to destroy, or do we continue to create and to conquer one day? Like, what is the goal?
My goal is out of here. I don't want to give this country. I don't want to give this country nothing else. I just don't. I don't want them to profit off of my blood or the blood of my children anymore. They don't deserve it. I absolutely just don't. I am at an unforgiving point at this point because of the suffering has been so great. And I think my turning point came when I got into this fight with Child Protective Services. And I just have no words for, I did a fought with criminal justice for 23 years and then coming over to the environmental sector and then going into Child Protective Service. These people I can't even match their savagery, okay? And so how can I beat them if I can't be as bad as them or worse? I could never do some of the things that they would do to people to stay on top. They've won by that alone. I'm not a savage. Now I'll kick their handpots in the street, but they gonna do some more extra stuff.
I'm sorry, all I had was Megan Thee Stallion in my head thinking savage.
No. Oh my God.
I was listening, but I was like, I like remixed it. I was like, I'm not a savage.
That's our new protest song. I need you to remix it. I need you to flip it.
I'm gonna drop that track real soon. That's coming.
And I do want to do a service announcement. I did just get a notification from a pretty credible source that it's been reported that white nationalist groups and KKK groups are planning to, to Sister Shabazz's point, terrorize our communities on July 4th this week. And so they're asking folks to tell other Black people so that you're not out and about and you are safely, whatever your choice is to celebrate or otherwise, to be at home, because that is what has been elevated to me just a couple of minutes ago. And I say that as a public service announcement for listeners and ourselves here to just be aware and to be grounded in what Sister Shabazz is elevating. It is present, and it has been, because we have incurred several weeks of folks being lynched. So this has been happening, but this is a real conversation to be had, and sometimes a conversation we really don't want to have because of all the mental health and trauma implications to just being Black in America. And so I just want to do that service announcement. And the other part is, like, I think Sister Shabazz brings up a really great point. I think it's a really, really great point. Something, though, that was in my mind is this conversation that's been ruminating about gentrification. And so gentrification, the action of where majority, white folks come in, steal land out from under our elders and folks in where our properties are not, the tax rates are low, and they could come in and either steal it because we haven't paid the taxes, or it's lapsed during like family crossover, or they literally just offer to buy your home for $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 and then resell it for $500,000. And so that's the act of gentrification. But something I was noticing was the pattern of gentrification. Gentrification was what they did when they came here. That's gentrification. It's just been renamed. They stole land that folks already had and then claimed it, didn't even rename it, like I said before. So if you are only here for the land, why do you have to keep gentrifying? That's what you did when you very first came here and you stole land. You should be sad. So why do we have then the Great Flight, right? When our people went up north for jobs, and here we were living in the city, so were white people. Then they moved to the suburbs where they stole more land. They keep moving. And what I keep noticing as a track record is they move when we move. So they're gentrifying the land, but technically speaking, they only want land that Black people have been on. That's kind of peculiar in a way, but it makes me say, if we did move, would they not just arrive wherever we are again, because they're really gentrifying us and the land is a part of that. But I think it's something a little bit deeper, more nefarious, is that it is us that they're oppressing because they reap the benefits off of our spiritual blessings and off of our gift to make magic out of anything. So why would you release it? That's a part of the modern day slavery. Like, it's not just the land they have, they should be happy. It's us. So even if we leave, I don't know if they'll leave us. That's a daunting question. That's something I think about.
I think about the numbers. And although I've never been to any part of Africa, and we do know that there's been many parts that have been gentrified, but we also know that there's parts that haven't, and there's places that you cannot go. I mean, even us in different tribes, you cannot go there because they will kill you. And we hear about that in the Amazon a lot. But to think that we could for once be proactive and start to have secret conversations and start to prepare ourselves in secret for another place, that if they do come, this is a whole nother land. We ain't talking about America, so you ain't about to come over here and pull them tricks that you pulled over in America. We running this on this side, and so you will experience a little bit of our revenge if you follow us. And so, but that would take, a cooperative effort of us going back home and seeing where our brothers and sisters are in those places. And then there's Europeanized lands too that don't deal with the slavery. They don't see it. And then, I'm just concerned about when you don't see color, that allows you to mistreat me in disguise. And I don't like that. I don't like that concept either. And so if they're going to continue to follow us, or if they are going to follow us and we don't have nowhere to go, then we better be planning to get our numbers up and to do something, because that's major. That's even worse.
So I understand that, because that would probably be like one of my biggest fears, to like run away from something I feared and then it just came behind me.
Yes.
Like, it's just like I try to get away from you. But remaining here, and like, Chuck, I'll pull you in, like the purpose of the conversation, 4th of July, when, like, do you have a moment where you say like you're proud to be American before you say you're proud to be Black?
No.
And like, do you ever have a day that you'll just be like, yo, I stand for everything this country stands behind? Because that's what 4th of July is.
Hey, I'm going to stand by my sentiments. I'm going to double down on this, that I believe that racism will be ended soon. Once said 5 years, I'm going to say soon. I'm also going to double down on this statement and say, hell yeah, eventually. Because if not for the folks that stay here, then what hope do you have? Listen to what you like, how you manifest and talk and move and divide and multiply and all of the things are very, very much accountable to the thoughts and minds that honestly interpret those things. And so, like, I say that to say that, like, man, it was last week, good friend, guy we all know, Dominic Jones, shares a story. And he's like, let me tell you about Liberia. It's like cool 11:30 at night, so I got nothing but time going through the stories. It's like a 13-slide story, but it made sense. He said, yo, when Abraham Lincoln emancipated blacks and black flight happened and the wars and all those things, he found that it actually suited black people better to allow for them to identify a place in Africa that was not necessarily very habited, like not colonized, but, you know, create space and land for you back there, right? When Revolutionary War ends and his mind changes. And he says, I do not feel comfortable.
Ain't that some crap?
I feel like that was about to go into a good speech.
Yeah, I needed it. I needed to hear that. Optimist and realist, because I consider myself to be a realist, and I do consider the numbers, because I just can't deal with the fairy tale. I like to hear their stories. For a second, it gives me a little bit of hope, and then I end up coming back down to reality of where we are. You know, it sounds good in theory, but you know, we got to keep us safe, and whatever that means, and whatever that requires, that's what I'm willing to do. And I just can't, you know, I can't tiptoe around that.
I think with me personally, just being the child of military parents, there's something like, I guess, embedded in my DNA where it's just like, okay, it's America, like this means something. I can't lie and say that I did not reap the benefits from the military. I cannot say that they didn't provide me easier lanes of access to certain things in life because of that. However, at the same time, I am also the recipient of trauma from the system, being wrongfully accused. And so I don't get to stand against that. My only hope stepping forward, and I support what he says in manifestation, standing behind like your goals or your dreams and your hopes. My only hope stepping forward is that you would just respect me, because through respect, I'm not asking you to like me. I'm not asking you to think I'm pretty, smart, educated, anything. I'm just asking you to treat me how you would treat your daughter or your mother or your son or your dad. Everyone should get that equal treatment. However, I'm also not going to lie and say that I feel that it's coming. I can't lie and say that.
Dominique, you know, I was a military child too. My father was in the military. My stepdad, both of those, well, one of them was in the military, and the other one, my mom didn't marry, but he's in the military as well. And my daughter is in the military. And I'm gonna say this to you: to reap a benefit, the military reap the benefit off of your family. We have to be very clear about, you know, these systems and what they extracted from us. You know, your parents risked their lives for a country that doesn't respect them, and so they are the ones that reap the benefit of your blood, of your family's labor, not the other way around. And you know, now that my daughter is in, and I told her, not, this ain't got nothing to do with you, don't join that military. But you know, she did anyway, and she's now seeing some things that, you know, I tried to protect her from. So she has some decisions that she has to make at this point in time in her life. But we got to stop giving them us. You know, they reap the benefits. They fully reap the benefits of our labor. And they can't even, there ain't nothing that they have that they didn't take, you know, that, or that they could give to us. They can never repay us. It's just not, it's not possible. And so I don't give them nothing.
You can go ahead and finish. We were like all like, ooh.
Ready, Charles.
And you know the man, Sister Shabazz, thank you so much. Honestly, earlier when I came on, I didn't give you the respect that you deserve, and honestly introduce myself to you. So good to meet you on this platform. I say that to say, LA, you're a legend. I'm gonna hit up Bass, legend. But I say that to say, so like going to the point of liberation, right, for Liberia, these soldiers, they go over and they see it like, oh snap, this joint is sweet. So, and you can check the numbers on this, almost 18,000 Black families and people moved to Liberia before the end of the war. End of the war comes,
Abraham Lincoln's like, I don't think it's fair for all of these people that died. So we're talking about the Black American soldier to now have to worry about going across and reestablishing for something that they just fought for. So here's the real problem with this. And this is the problem with supremacy. The problem with supremacy, which is why I believe many folks are advocating against the 4th of July, bringing this all full circle, is that supremacy allows for you to have an assumptive notion of leadership that gives you the privilege to make the decisions for others. And that's a problem. So Abraham Lincoln makes this decision, doesn't consult the families that are there, and the families that are there are excommunicated from the U.S. during that time, which is super easy because all you had to do was send a letter to a person that doesn't live there, and then next thing you know, that sticks. Well, my biggest, takeaway from both assumptive supremacy as well as transformational leadership is the fact that, like, yeah, for us to get to a place to where we can celebrate July 4th, we also have to get to a place to where we can celebrate the healing as well as the wounds of Black America, as so many deposits have been stolen from both our women, our children, and our families in more than marginal ways that honestly can't be given back in a reparation. And so when you look at like the next 7 months in terms of the way in which this narrative then becomes our benefit and our testimony, we have honestly 2 real fights. We found the killers for Breonna Taylor. And then we win the White House back and hold whomever's the progressive candidate more than accountable. And we show that at the end of the day, regardless of who's in power as a Manchurian candidate, as the homies would say, or, a law-abiding citizen, Blackness, whether if it leaves or if it stays, is equal regardless of the 3/5 of a man clause. And then you can continue to double back and dive into the fact that, like, and as an educator in education, and now, a proud member of Northeastern's Law School, it perplexed me to know that, like, a large portion in LA, you made this point of essentially like where Black people live, then white people come, and then Black people leave, then white people come. So I've studied with high fidelity, more fidelity than I've given, relationships with teammates that we play sports for. High fidelity in terms of where the actual diaspora of Black people go. A large portion of North Carolinians went to New York. A large portion of Georgians, if that's the thing, went to like Chicago, Illinois, like the Midwest. And so I say that to say that, like, this last semester I had a crazy project, y'all. It's called Undesign a Red Line. And I'm a country boy now. I'm telling you. It ain't even about a yeehaw. We just like playing ball. Like, it's just a thing. Like check it up. So I say that to say that I'm sitting here like looking at Undesign the Red Line, and y'all check this out. Undesign the Red Line is led by an amazing woman by the name of April D. Simone, and she goes to large urban areas on the Eastern Seaboard and identifies the first ever red lines established by banks, and sees the diaspora in which cities move and migrate people of color, Black people, due to the benefit of the city and less for the benefit of the person. So this is actually happening right now in Washington, D.C. So like Washington, D.C. is pushing folks out, to the borders of the city, almost to the suburbs, but not necessarily like all the way out to Landover. But then in like North Carolina, Charlotte is a prime example. So the entire south side of the city of Charlotte at one point in time was a red line community. And now it's seen as high property value. Why? Because it's right beside, what's that town? It's where all the sports players play. Starts with a B. Haven't been home in a minute. But that starts with a B. Valentine. It's right beside.
Yeah. Arboretum and all of that.
Right? And so because it's in a 15-mile proximity to Valentine, and Wellesley is the neighboring school district, and Wellesley is like the highest prestige of a 4A colonial school, with the exception of a couple of others, in the tri-state area. And so I say that to say that, like, man, if you're able to identify the red lines of your community, while also at the same time understanding that these banks really ain't for you, bro. And if you have the privilege, especially I'm talking to the country folk, to where you have your name on a deed and you got a little bit of dirt in your hands, fam, invest in your dirt and make sure that at the end of the day, you don't end up like a soldier in the Revolutionary War. God rest their souls. Thank you so much for their effort. And realize that the place that you thought you were going to go, that you were going to be able to keep, was still stolen by the same level of assumptive supremacy that gave you the opportunity to not be free in the war. So at the end of the day, the cycle doesn't break because it's a dependent relationship, which then goes to a larger conversation on how to detoxify American Blackness. And more importantly, make American Blackness, Black Americans, the actual beacon of hope that still pushes this culture forward. Like the greatest griots that we have in my time exists from a guy by the name of KRS-One and span long past a guy by the name of Jay-Z. And they tell the story, you know, of how we honestly can continue to show and innovate inside of our perspective and privilege as a people, because we are the culture. Regardless of how it moves, however it's like cut and diced, if we were going to like, if we were to now say Black people wanted to live in Russia in mass, cool. The culture will follow us. And the next thing you know, we'd create innovation there. So I appreciate you, Don, for letting me come back in. I apologize, you know, saying the man tried to take me out, but I was super persistent.
Now you said take the White House back again. When did we have it?
No, I didn't say take the White House back again. Not my sentiment.
What did you say about the White House? Because that's what I thought I heard. Where you hit? Did you hit mute?
No, ma'am.
Okay, there you go. What did you say about the White House?
I ain't saying nothing about the White House.
You did.
The White House.
I promise you.
You were talking about elections.
I was talking about elections, and specifically the ability to like make the politically unpopular Blackness popular again.
You recorded this, right? I see the record button. I'm gonna have to go back because it hit me like somebody punched me in my face when you had said whatever it was you had said.
Before we close out, I just want to circle back slightly on one thing that you said, and I'm going to go ahead and let Bakira and Lamisha close out on their last remarks on the 4th of July. But I want to make sure that we are promoting education on things that we are fighting currently. So I'm sitting up here and I'm going to forever talk about I'm breaking all the rules now. However, to break rules, you need to understand the rules. And everybody is sitting up here promoting information on Breonna Taylor. Arrest the killers, cussing out the Black man who refuses to sign the papers. You know, the AG, he just released a paper today talking about Beyonce can write me and it doesn't matter. She has no influence on, you know, the progress of this case. It's an, you know, intensive and, you know, immaculate kind of, you know, investigation that needs to occur. I don't understand that because you've already passed a law, so it can't happen again. So what is like, you know, the stipulation? However, what people have to understand that is protecting those police officers that everyone knows killed Breonna Taylor are the union contracts that they have. And those stipulations under the union contract are going to save them every time. So, you know, officers are not going to be able to get interrogated immediately. Whatever information that department has access to, officers get that before they're even interviewed. And so they're going to be provided like, basically, here's what you say to get away with it kind of thing. You have situations where if they say it takes too long, that's what really scares me about this whole extensive, you know, investigation under this. If it surpasses a certain amount of time, the case automatically gets dropped. And until that case gets dropped, taxpayers are still paying for those officers to be on paid leave because it's an automatic stipulation that they are going on paid leave despite, you know, whatever situation occurred or whatever grievance that they have, because their commanding officer is going to put in paperwork. Once it surpasses 30 days, they're going to put in some more paperwork so those people continue to get paid. Those union contracts are protecting them. So we can continue to keep writing letters and calling numbers and coming up with these cute little memes that suggest that we're still thinking about Breonna Taylor, which we are, and it's very important that we do. At the same time, we also have to understand they're not doing anything. And so until, you know, everybody collectively understands this together and takes an alternate, you know, action point towards it, Breonna Taylor's killers are never getting arrested, y'all.
I think it goes a deeper point, because if all we wanting is arresting, they'll do that, and then they'll give them a bond, and then they'll charge them, and then they'll say that it was justified. You know, we have to say we want them convicted of murder, and that needs to be the language. You know, an arrest, people come home from arrest in 20 minutes. You know, people get charged every day, and the charges don't stick. I'm a stickler about, you know, I hate when people say, "Oh, we want justice." Well, what is that? What do you say? Tell me what you want, Black people, and stick to that. Be specific in your ask. Stop it with the open-ended and letting them decide what justice is for you. Say what it is that you want.
Well, I'm going to say this last thing, and I'm going to change the topic, because this will turn into like a whole nother hour and a half conversation. So we're going to go back to the closing remarks on 4th of July. But what I will say is that sometimes, you know, we're asking as a Black community for people to get arrested. And I released an article on my website about a month ago with the Ahmaud Arbery case. What happens when you send these killers to jail? When you send them to prison, how does that fix the problem? I said, because in another week, we're going to have another hashtag. I was not asking for George Floyd to happen. I was not asking for Breonna Taylor to happen. I just know that sending Ahmaud Arbery's killers to prison wasn't going to stop the problem against Black Americans. And so collectively, we got to break the rules and come up with different answers, y'all. But just to wrap this up, because like I said, we can continue to talk on this for hours. Your final remarks on 4th of July, Bakira and Lamisha.
I ain't with it.
Something I do want to elevate really briefly is an example of what you were saying, Dom, about needing to know your policy. Last Friday, in the middle of the night, when all North Carolinians were asleep, a Senate Bill 168 was passed with little to no discussion, and both sides voting for it, I think, with only one no, so almost a unanimous vote. And it was a bill that had a lot of money for relief, like millions of dollars for relief for North Carolina, right? But hidden in that bill was a statement, a provision that would give complete authority to law enforcement, prisons, and jails to hide the entire investigation, the cause of death. Prior to this, of course, this would be hidden from the public up until the investigation was turned over to the chief medical examiner. Once it was turned over to the chief medical examiner, that is when the cause of death would become public knowledge. Family would know, media would know, and then we could, as we've seen over the past couple of years, including 2020 up to George Floyd, proving the cause of death, the autopsy. With that bill passing, that bill would now keep everything private, even the cause of death, once in the hands of the chief medical examiner. That was Friday. So we could arrest folks. And here's the thing, that being passed, we advocates, everyone, and I'm not going to name all the organizations, but you should definitely check out, our, Facebook and website, because there's a lot of folks that we have elevated that in chorus, we did press conferences, paper delivery to the governor, to the point where folks were calling on their elected progressive representatives, senators, who was like, where were you? And there was reasons, right? But it was like, and even Ice Cube tweeted on it all the way from California saying North Carolina was embarrassing. Today, we received the word from a senator that bill has now been pulled back, and I have to confirm it, but it has been pulled off the desk of the governor because he was the last signature and it would have become a law. That's why we were all doing, NC Bourne, other folks was out there protesting the governor's mansion. That's why all of us were doing that. And now it's been pulled off of his desk because progressive senators and other folks are like, well, we need to look at this bill deeper. If that wouldn't have happened and folks were not organized and in momentum in this moment, it would have passed. And then it would have been signed into law. And then we would be here again, but worse. It would be another layer on top of another layer of crap. The thing is, first degree and second degree murder, in order to prove that, even when folks are arrested, it comes with a burden of proof. You literally have to prove. So if you have no proof, if records are private, how do you expect that arrest to actually stick? So knowing your policy beyond just get folks arrested, that's not policy, that's a level, but there's many layers of our oppression. And if we're only looking at one silo, we have missed the other 10 literal traps that was created because this whole device of America is so interlayered because they don't want us free. So if we're just kicking off this layer, we've missed the other 9. So that's why folks who are looking at policy from regulatory language, folks who are literally staying up at night now, like literally people were talking where they're going to be staying up to just look for bills that come through now to investigate language because some of our electeds aren't doing it, what they're elected to do. Citizens and residents are doing that now. So there's a lane, and I do say that because here's one thing, and I'll leave this by closing statement. There's a book called The Shock Doctrine. It tells you everything, not everything, but it gives you very clearly how the American government has used crisis capitalism as a way to institute horrific policies, and they have to do it within 18 months. Shock Doctrine says if there is a crisis, you can get in the most nefarious, horrendous legislation if you do it in 18 months because the American people will be distracted by the crisis. And they used Hurricane Katrina as the launching pad for this theory that was developed by a white economist who trained multiple American presidents before his death. And he said Hurricane Katrina was his greatest achievement in taking over the entire area, taking down the entire public school system, replacing with charter schools, dismantling the teacher union. All the things happening in Hurricane Katrina was his experiment, and it worked. That is what we are in. That's why legislation is popping up. That's why judges look at your judicial nominees. So I say this with Chuck, vote for your president, yes, but he is a symbol for down ballot. You have to look at these judge races because their terms don't end. It's indefinite. That's the thing, is like we get tripped up because we're only looking at the person in there for 8 years max. And these judges are going to be in here for until death.
Yep.
That's policy. That's policy. Next year, after this presidential election, who we vote for? Your mayor. Who you vote for? Your local folks who are literally in charge of your schools and how your children get treated and your SRO contracts. The school board here in Wake County voted after we said, don't do the SRO contracts. They renewed it. That's not federal, honey. That's local. So we have to be like, we have to do the voting. Then we have to be on census. We have to do redistricting. And then we have to have folks who are cued in on each of these policy lanes because it's not coming from one angle only. It can't just be voting. It has to be all of it.
And we got only 12.3% of the population to be in control of all of that. And minorities have creeped up above us, and they're siding with our open enemy. And then we have an open enemy that is 60-something% of the population. And so I don't know what to do with that.
Right.
All right, Chuck, did you have any final words?
Please give me some optimism on, after you done heard all of that, how we gonna fix that.
Come on, Chuck. Give me some.
Hey, I think then you should hit the horn. Blah, 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 blah. Like, if you can get out and vote, y'all. More importantly, you not only control the narrative, but you actually make a deposit in form of a generational seed for the efforts of your todays to not be wasted on somebody else's tomorrows. So optimistically,
You believe voting changes things?
100%. It's all you look at.
We
Like-
gonna have that whole voting conversation next week.
That ain't all we got,
I
brother.
don't even think I'm ready for that.
I said it. Let me finish. I say that to say that,
Because
like,
we've been voting. We've been voting. Ever since we could, we've been voting.
that's
I just
fair.
want to leave you with that.
I appreciate you. But I say that to say, because that's your business. Tee up Mama Tab. The thing about voting is that if we believe, or if we know, we all Black here, if we know how toxic and wild reality is in being Black and fighting supremacy, voting is twice as toxic. And so if you can clean voting with good elected officials and then go back and have those officials hold these districts in North Carolina that aren't even letting certain zip codes actually have, you know, access to ballots, and we ain't even talking mail-in ballots. Heck yeah. LA said it very well, that like it trickles down the ballot. And if you don't get out and inform yourself, at least y'all, and this is my beg and plead on call with 3 amazing sisters. Please vote proper for your DA. I grew up in Gibsonville, North Carolina. Small anecdote, girl down. They would put a paddy wagon at the top of the neighborhood. And this is Gibsonville, home of Tory Hope K. Out, Chuck Jones. They put a paddy wagon at the top of the neighborhood. It'd be black kids galore outside. I'm talking lit. Water balloon fights. This is in the middle of the day now. Water balloon fights, basketball, street, you know, like high schoolers coming home. And then you would just hear like a big old buckshot go off, like, pow. And then next thing you know, you would see all of the boyfriends, older guys, husbands, running through a neighborhood to only be trapped because they put the paddy wagon at the back, throwing salt and pepper in. And the next thing you know, a whole family's dismantled. A family of 5 goes to a family of 4. And the next thing you know, that family of 4 is leaning on one. And that one, oftentimes, a counterpart of yourselves, an amazing black woman, still has to figure out more than one way to be creative and code switching not only her own trauma and her pain of losing either her partner or her brother during that time, but also at the same time, not even knowing where to take that frustration to because the police locked them up with dogs just for prison labor out at the county. Now, he may come home 9 times out of 10. There's a guy, his name's Junebug. He always came home like around November, swole up with gold teeth. However, when he comes home, he's not the same. He can't deposit into his family like he once did because there's gap there. And your father or your brethren or your loving out of reaction and instead of out of, you know what I'm saying, your natural light. So yeah, I believe if you can get out and vote and make sure that your prosecutor for your county doesn't have prosecutorial discretion by all means and doing the amazing work of folks that you believe in, we'll be fine.
Yeah, nobody ever runs against our prosecutor. He's been in since '82. They won't run against him.
That was like an amazing transition into next week's conversation. Thank you so much, Chuck, for that. I just want to thank you all again for being on today's panel and just speaking on behalf of the Black community and our true feelings about, you know, 4th of July. And I feel that anybody who watches this can see how much you cannot encompass our trauma into just one topic. It spans over everything. So even trying to facilitate that would be impossible by anyone. I appreciate watching, and I hope everyone has a wonderful evening.
Yes.
Thank you, Dom. Appreciate y'all.
Thank you. So good meeting y'all. Y'all stay safe. And
right.
Yeah.
I really appreciate all of you guys because you guys are like powerful, and then like everybody's coming with a different stance, like bam, bam. And then I thought like Bakira was getting ready to like throw hands with Chuck, and then I see Chuck.
I seen
like, oh,
real quick.
about to get high.
Reggie, are we still broadcasting?
We are still recording. I can pause it now, though.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks.
no, like, let's don't throw blows like by any means. Like,
Not really.